Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Betty. I am a diabetes specialist nurse who moved from Jamaica, currently living in London in the UK. Today's video is a very personal one. With Father's Day here, I've been thinking a lot about my dad. He passed away on February 12, 2021. And although it's been more than 5 years, there isn't a day that doesn't go by where I don't think about him in some way. Today, I want to share my story, not just how we lost him, but who he was and what he taught me, the memories I cherish, and the impact he continues to have on my life, even now. So, grab a cup of tea, let's get comfortable and get into today's video. If I had to describe my dad in a few words, I would say he was humble, kind, hardworking, and deeply family oriented. My dad was a welder by profession, but he was so much more than that. He was a very quiet man. He didn't really speak a lot, but when he did speak, his words carried weight. He was born and raised in Alps Trelawney, Jamaica, and he was incredibly proud of his roots. One thing I always admired about him was how connected he was to his family. Not just his immediate family, but his extended family. He seemed to know everyone, every cousin, every aunt, every uncle, every niece, every nephew. You could literally be driving somewhere and he would point someone out and explain to me how I was related to them. Family meant everything to him. He was also someone who loved the outdoors. Gardening and farming were in his blood. It seemed like anything he planted would grow and flourish. He enjoyed fishing, going for long walks, going for long drives to the country. He enjoyed camping as well, just spending a lot of time outdoors. My dad was a foodie, but he was also a vegetarian. He enjoyed good food, good company. So, running a boat, that's where he was. He just enjoyed the simple things in life. He was well known in the community, not because he sought attention, but because of his character. He was kind to people, respectful, and always willing to help when he could. His faith was also a big part of his life. He served as a deacon in church, sang on the choir, and supported people in whatever way he could. One thing that makes me especially proud is that throughout his career as a welder, he taught many young men the trade. Over the years, some of them have gone on to create successful welding businesses of their own. He may never have realized it, but he left a legacy not only through his family, but through the lives he helped shape. That was my dad, a quiet man, a humble man, a family man, and a man who made a difference in more lives than he probably even knew. When I think about my dad, so many memories comes to mind, but only 3 of them really stand out over the others. So one of the earliest and clearest memories that I had was when I was a little girl and my mom and my sister had gone to Disney World on my sister's school trip. I remember feeling so disappointed that I couldn't go. And instead I was staying home with daddy, and I was just convinced it was going to be a boring few days. I could not have been more wrong. Those few days turned into one of my favorite childhood memories. Every morning we'd head out and we'd stop for breakfast, usually patties, and then I'd tag along while he did his errands. We'd drive around, visit different places, do a bit of grocery shopping, stop for lunch, and somehow the simplest things felt like an adventure. What I remember most wasn't exactly where we went, but it was the time we spent together. In fact, when my mom and my sister came back, I remember feeling a little disappointed that our special routine would end. It's funny because as a child, I thought I was missing out on Disney World. But what I gained instead was a memory with my dad that I've carried with me for the rest of my life. Another memory that always makes me smile happened when I was in high school. My mom had just undergone surgery and my sister was in university. So again, me and dad, we were on our own. There was only one tiny problem. I couldn't do my hair. No matter what I tried, my hair just looks like a complete mess. Tears in my eyes, my father saw me and he said, all right, come let me do your hair. Let me tell you, my father was many things. He was a welder, he was a deacon, he was a farmer. He was not a hairstylist. Parts in my hair were surprisingly very straight. I'll give him that. But the plaits, every plait seemed to have its own personality. They looked like distant cousins rather than sisters. But I wore my plaits with pride. Every morning he would do my hair, take me to school. Then when I got there, one of my friends who actually knew what she was doing would usually redo it for me. But the next morning, we do it all again. Looking back, this was such a core memory for me, not because of the hairstyle. It's the fact that he saw a problem and he stepped in to help. He didn't worry about if this was something dads usually do. His daughter needed him, so he showed up. And then there's one memory that became more precious after he passed. His last birthday. At the time, I had recently graduated from university and I was making a little bit more money. For the first time, I was able to take my dad out for a nice birthday dinner. We got dressed up, went to a nice restaurant, and it was just the two of us. Now, one thing you should know about me and my dad, we argued a lot. Nothing serious, but we both had strong personalities and somehow always found something to debate. So there we were having a lovely dinner. The atmosphere was peaceful, the food was good, and I remember commenting on how beautiful the restaurant was. And then my dad looked at me and said, if only you could keep your room this clean. I remember thinking, really? Right now? Right now? Looking back, I laugh every time I think about it. But in the moment, I was very annoyed because I felt like he interrupted a perfect father-daughter moment. Now, years later, that comment is one I treasure the most because it is so him. That dinner became one of our last special moments, and I'm so grateful I got the opportunity to be able to do that for him. When I look at all three of these memories, I notice a common thread. Whether it was spending time with me as a little girl, spending time braiding my hair, or sharing a birthday dinner filled with laughter and friendly arguments, my dad always showed up. And honestly, that's one of the greatest gifts a parent can give a child. When I think about what my dad has taught me, many lessons come to mind. One of the biggest was taking pride in your work. My dad was a welder and he took his craft very seriously. He had an incredible eye for detail and always wanted things done properly. He wasn't the type of person who believed in like cutting corners. If he was going to do something, he wanted to do it well. But what always amazed me was that he wasn't limited to just one skill. In fact, we still have the sewing machine he used to make baby clothes for my sister. He was literally a jack of all trades. If there was anything in the house that needed to be fixed, whether plumbing, electrical, masonry, best believe he was doing it. That taught me that learning should never stop. My dad was also incredibly resilient. Life didn't always go according to plan, but he didn't allow setbacks to define him. I remember times when his vehicle wasn't working, and instead of just staying home and complaining, he simply got out his bicycle and kept moving forward. That's something I've carried with me throughout my life. Challenges may slow you down, but they don't have to stop you. He was also pretty entrepreneurial. He was always thinking about opportunities, always looking at ways to create something, build something, or even improve something. Looking back, I think that's where I got a lot of my own interests in business and creativity. Another thing I inherited from him was his willingness to try new things. Whether it was learning a new skill, starting a new project, or finding a different way to solve a problem, he wasn't afraid to step out of what felt familiar. But if there's one quality of his that I aspire to have more of, it's his humility. Everything changed on January 1st, 2021. Just after the New Year's countdown, my dad told me that he was having pain in his shoulder and it was radiating down his arm. I had recently finished nursing school and I was concerned that the symptoms he was describing seemed very similar to that of a heart attack. There was no time to waste. I told him to get ready. I called a taxi, and my mom, him, and myself, we jumped in the taxi, went to Kingston Public Hospital. There we learned he indeed suffered a heart attack. At first, he was still himself. He was talking, he was alert, he was still himself. And although he needed to stay in hospital, we were still hopeful. But when he came home a few days later, something wasn't right. He was slower, he seemed confused, he just wasn't the dad I knew. I remember moments when mommy and I were helping him with simple things and I had to step away and I would bawl because I wasn't exactly ready to see him like that. And when we took him back to the hospital, we didn't realize that this would have been the last time he left our home. Weeks that followed were during COVID, so visiting restrictions were in place. Only one person was allowed to visit at a time, and all we wanted was to spend time with him and to understand what was happening. I remember a lot of frustration. I remember feeling confused and very helpless while he was in hospital. Then came February 12th, 2021. The day before was my birthday, and my mom went to visit him then, and I decided that I would see him the next day. When I got there, he didn't look like himself anymore. I took a few photos with him so that I could update the family as to how he was doing. And before I left, I gave him a long, warm hug. That Friday night, I woke up around 11 and I couldn't fall back asleep. For some reason, I was overwhelmed with emotion. I remember lying in my bed and just crying uncontrollably. And I didn't want to wake up mommy, so I just went on my phone and I was messaging my sister. She just had a baby, so I was hoping that she was awake. The strange thing is that she was the only one awake in her home as well. We stayed up messaging each other until we both fell asleep. The next morning, the hospital called us and asked us to come in. As a nursing graduate, I knew that calls like that often weren't a good sign, but I still held on to hope. I told myself that probably there was some procedure or some blood tests that needed a signature to be done. But when we arrived, his bed was empty. We were asked to sit and wait. We waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And at this time, I noticed that my mom was getting a little bit anxious. So I got up and I wasn't very loud, but I was very concerned. I'm like, what's happening? We've been asked to come in. We've been sitting for over 15 minutes. Can somebody tell us what's going on? So then a doctor answered me and asked us to go with her to a room. She then began to explain my dad's condition. And then the last thing I remember her saying was, I'm sorry. Honestly, I don't really remember much about what happened afterwards. I remember finding myself on the floor and I remember my mom was crying. I also remember calling my sister and having to explain what happened to her, and that was when I just couldn't. Probably a very long phone call, a very confusing phone call. And it wasn't until that I actually said it when it actually connected to me. And it just felt so unreal because I have known this man for all my life. How is this possible? And in that moment, my life changed forever. As I bring this video to a close, I often think about what I would say to my dad if I had the opportunity to talk to him again. As a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I believe that when a person dies, they're in like a deep slumber. I believe my dad is asleep, waiting for the day when Christ returns and calls his children home. And if I could speak to him today, I think the first thing I would say to him is, Dad, I hope you're proud of me. I hope you're proud of the woman I've become. I hope you're proud of the nurse I've become. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for the sacrifices that you made that I probably didn't appreciate back then. Thank you for the lessons you taught me, the values you lived by, and the examples that you set for me. When I look back at my career as a diabetes specialist nurse, I realize that so much of my journey so far has been around my experience of you with diabetes. I realize that so much of my journey is around the experience of watching you with diabetes. And while there are many moments where I miss you deeply, there is still gratitude. Gratitude that I got to be your daughter. Gratitude that I got to learn from you. Gratitude that I got to love you and be loved by you. I hope that the life I'm living is a reflection of the values that you've passed on to me. And I hope you'd be proud. I know I'm so proud to be your daughter. Now, if you're fortunate to still have your father around, give him a call, spend time with him, ask him questions, listen to his stories, take the photos, create the memories. Because one of the things that grief has taught me is that the moments that seem ordinary today often becomes the memories that we will cherish tomorrow. And if you're someone who has lost your father, I want you to know that you are not alone. Grief changes over time, but love remains. My dad passed away over 5 years ago, and there are still moments where I think of him, laugh at something he would have said, or wish I could share a piece of my life with him. But today, more than anything, I'm grateful. Thank you for listening to my story. If this video resonated with you, I'd love for you to share a memory with your father or a father figure in your life. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.